Hi, welcome to this video on principal component analysis. In my previous video, I discussed about how unsupervised learning can be branched into two major categories. One category would be clustering, where we try to segregate data into parts which are similar to each other and dissimilar amongst each other and dissimilar to each other. And we saw how two primary methods of clustering, these were centroid based clustering and connectivity based clustering. We saw one example of each. For centroid based clustering, we saw the most popular method, which was k-means. For connectivity based clustering, we learned about h-clust algorithm. Now, if you haven't watched these videos, please go back to my previous videos and watch them before proceeding. In this video, we are going to talk about the other part of unsupervised learning, which is dimensionality reduction. Also known as one of the methods by which it can be done is principal component analysis. In this video, we will understand what dimensionality reduction is and why do we need it. Then we would see two major methods of dimensionality reduction, and then we would conclude this topic with a video on hands-on example. Now, what is dimensionality reduction? Usually, given a data, we would have something we want to predict and a number of features which help us predict that. Now, generally, uh, if we want to predict something, we might want to have as many features that has influence over what we are trying to predict. So imagine a data set in this form where one of the columns would be the target columns, also known as uh, the labeled column, the column which we were trying to predict, and rest of the columns would be features. Now, ideally, if these features have some predictive power to what we are trying to predict, we would want to have as many features as possible for our algorithms to try to understand. Now, remember, the heart of machine learning is learning from this data, that is past data, extracting information from it, isolating the noise with a hope that this information repeats in future. Now, if we are able to do that correctly, our models work well. If we take too many features, what happens is we also we also learn some of the noise with the information. Now, this is called overfitting. But when we do not have enough features, that means there might be a lot of things which predict y, which have predicting power to y, but we have access to only a few, let's say. Then we might not even be able to learn all the information. We might not be able to capture all the information from the past. And this is a typical case of underfit. So, but the problem with having multiple features is something known as curse of dimensionality. There are multiple problems which uh, leads us to this topic of dimensionality reduction. On if we have too many dimensions, how is that we would be able to reduce these dimensions without losing any information. Before we go there, first we have to understand what is the problem by having multiple of these features. The first and the major problem is known also as curse of dimensionality. Now, most of the algorithms which we have learned so far work on a notion of distance. Distance between any two observations would mean how similar they are or how far apart they are. Now, we have discussed many number of times on how every observation can be represented as a point in mathematical space. Uh, if you are finding it difficult to grasp that intuition, I would advise take a quick detour, go back to my previous videos, and then quickly come back. So what happens if we increase these dimensions? So if we had only two dimensions, we could put this observation as one dot on an xy plane, x corresponding to this feature, y corresponding to this feature, another dot, same x y, corresponding to this observation now. So we would have, for n number of observations, we would have n dots on a two dimensional plane if we had only two features. If we add a third feature, then we would have to project this third feature on a third dimension. Then that becomes a 3D surface, if you may, a 3D space rather, where each point would be mapped to x, y, and z axes, and it becomes like a cloud in three dimensional space. Now it so happens we cannot visualize beyond three dimensions, but the way these machines work is by mapping all of these features onto different axes and representing every record or every observation as a point in that multi-dimensional mathematical space. Now it so happens that as we increase the dimensions, the distance between any given two points or any given two observations increases. So let's start with one dimension. If we just had x axis and we plot all these, and we just had one column of information and we put a dot based on these observations, the distance between any points would give the distance. But if we have, for the same x, if we add one more column, one more feature, we would map that to another axis y. Now this becomes a two-dimensional image with imagine it like a scatter plot. Now for the same two observations, you would notice the distance would increase considerably. So I would encourage taking a pencil and paper at this point of time. Try putting some random numbers on this column and plotting it in one dimension. Then add some more random numbers, call it y-axis if you may, and then try to plot the same image, same set of data in two-dimensional, and notice how the distance between any 2 points would change. You need not plot multiple points, just take 3 random points and then try increasing from going from one axis to two axes. 3 axes would not really be possible on a paper, but by extrapolating the same logic, every time we add a dimension, the distance between same two observations would increase, and this uh, increases at a very fast pace. That means from one to second axis, from one axis to two axes, there would be certain increase in the distance between the, and if you add one more axis, the increase now is little bit more than the prior increase. So it so happens that if we add quite a lot of these dimensions, then the entire notion of distances break down, where every distance between any given 2 points tends to infinity. So that because of that phenomenon, the entire notion of distances break down, and because that notion of distances ceases to make meaningful sense, most of the models will not give any meaningful results. The second major issue with having quite a lot of features is most of the models assume certain independence between all the features. So try to remember linear regression, naive Bayes, all of these assume certain independence between the models. So by independence, I mean one feature does not influence any other feature. So if we are trying to predict weight of a person by taking his shoe size and height, you are making a huge assumption that shoe size and height do not are not related to each other. But we know that as a person grows taller, his shoe size would increase. So there is definitely some relation between these two variables. Now, by that logic, the more features we add, the more likely that there might be quite a lot of these relations between these variables. This is a phenomenon known as collinearity. So, multicollinearity means when there are multiple such features with multiple correlations among them. Now, this has an effect of distorting the model output, and quite most of the models do not perform well when the features are related to each other. The third problem with having quite a lot of features is overfitting. So as we increase this by a huge margin, as we increase the number of features by a huge margin, what happens is our models not only capture the information, but it also captures the noise. And we know that this noise is something that doesn't repeat in future, only the information part does. So it leads to overfitting. And also, like, as your number of features increase, so would your computation time. And the final and the least important factor behind why we want to reduce dimensionality is also the ability to visualize beyond three dimensions. If we are somehow able to summarize this entire model, this entire data set into only three features, then we can visualize it. Visualization is a very, very important cue on understanding patterns. uh, so that also should not be underestimated. But combination of all of these, and most importantly the first two, curse of dimensionality and the relationship amongst the features, are what makes are these two make dimensionality reduction a really big deal in machine learning. Well, let's understand how do we reduce these dimensions. There are two major methods of reducing the number of features. The first way, and a very naive way, which I would not recommend, is by feature elimination. So in this method, given n number of features, we try to see if a feature has any effect or predictive power on what we are trying to predict. This can be done using multiple statistical techniques, and usually what statisticians do is they observe a particular value called a p-value, and that's how they would know how good x a feature influences the outcome or what we are trying to predict. And when they do it recursively over all the columns, they would find some columns would not have as much predictive power as the others, and they drop off the ones which would not have as much predictive power. Now this is a way, and it works. It I'm not saying it doesn't work, but what it also does is something that is useful. Perhaps if we draw this column, regardless how small, but x3 has some information in it, and we are losing a whole bunch of information. And also it might be that uh, it might so happen that this column might not have as much predictive power, but this was independent from all the other features, and all the other ones are collinear. Now that in those situations, it becomes very difficult to use this technique of eliminating an entire feature altogether. That brings us to the next method of dimensionality reduction. Here, instead of eliminating features, we try to create new features. This is called feature extraction. So one easy way to think about it is, imagine this as your data set. What we do is we define a new feature. Let's call it Z1. Z1, I have defined it to be some linear combination of first three features. So let's say it's 2 times x1, 3 times x2, and half a time x3. That's how I've defined Z1. We'll come to how we decide these numbers, but let's just assume these numbers lead to another feature called Z1, and similar way a linear combination of rest of the features leads me to a column Z2. Now I can calculate it. So using every row by row, I would calculate every row of Z1 and Z2, and I would end up with a data set with all of these features squeezed into two features. Now, because each feature has captured some information from all the features, we have not lost any information. So, this is a summary version of this. Without losing data, we have been able to somehow squeeze this data set into a slimmer version of it, if I may. So, this particular way of doing these things, of reducing the dimensionality, is called feature extraction. One of the most popular methods used on in feature extraction is an algorithm called, or is rather a mathematical method called principal component analysis. Let's understand how principal component analysis works. So the way principal component analysis works is, let's take the same data set, but instead of just taking some features and then squeezing them together, what it does is it takes all the features and puts them in some linear combination and arrives at one feature. It again takes all the features, but this time it puts a different linear combination. So if you see, I've changed these variables. So in earlier slide I said 2, 3.5. I've just denoted them by variables. By changing these variables, I'm just changing the weightage of each feature. So imagine this to be 2 times x1, 3 times x2, 4 times x3, and so on, and add it together leads to z1. And another combination might be half x1, 4 times x2, 3 by 4th x3, and so on. And as long as it's a linear combination, we should be able to arrive at another feature. So conceptually, that's how principal component analysis works. So there are two things to note away. One is these engineered features, the features that we have extracted, are a linear combination of all of these features. And I will show how, but for now stay with me. These two are independent of each other as a result of the method by which we put the linear combinations of existing features. It results in a set of features which are independent of each other. So with this method, principal component analysis, not only we have managed to reduce the number of features without losing any information, we have also managed to make each feature independent of each other. So it really solves two of our major problems with having large set of features in any data set. Now it so happens that we also would know which feature is the most important, or which feature has the highest predictive power when we use this method. So let's go into detail of how this is done, and let's understand it with a little intuitive example on how these variables are calculated. So let's take only a simple two-dimensional data set with two features x1, x2. So I plot them with one axis as x1, x2, and this is how the data looks like. Now remember when I said each of the engineered or extracted feature is a linear combination of these? Now the way your machine draws these engineered features or extracted features is, so think of your data as like, if your data is like this, what is the natural axis of the data? So in which direction data is spread out the most? Now that usually would have very high predictive power to y than the direction in which data is lesser spread. So it first identifies the direction in which data is most dispersed and it draws an axis. So the direction of this particular vector would be in the direction in which data is most spread. The amount of spread can be measured by variance. So hence the first axis would be in the direction in which it is most spread, and the length of this vector would be the amount of the variance in that particular direction. Now once we identify this, the next feature or the next you remember each of these features are in fact the axes. So the first feature x1 is this axis, first feature, second feature is this axis. Now you can think of this particular vector as the new axis. And in the same way, perpendicular to this, we draw another axis which measures the dispersion or the variance of the data in this direction. So you would see in this direction the variance is quite less, and in this direction the variance is quite more. Now this was a two-dimensional data. In a three-dimensional data, this would take form of a cloud, and we would have three of these directions. The first direction corresponding to the direction in which data is spread the most, and then in a direction which is in which it is spread intermediarily, and then the third direction would be direction in which data is spread the least. Now for this two dimensional, this becomes the z1, this becomes z2, and the way this length is calculated is what leads to these a1 these coefficients which we use. So that brings us to a concept of eigenvalues and eigenvectors. So think of eigenvalue as these axes. So because it's a two-dimensional data, it would have two of these axes. Think of these axes as the natural axis of data instead of the mathematical one which we have drawn. How is the data naturally spreading? So it spreads like this. That becomes first eigenvalue. The second one becomes second eigenvalue. Now the length of these are what are known as eigenvectors. So what principal component analysis tries to do is first take the data, understand the spread, draw eigenvalues with a length proportional to eigenvector. There would be as many eigenvalues as the number of features. If it was a three-dimensional data, we would have three eigenvalues. If it was a four-dimensional data, we would have four eigenvalues. So this is the intuition behind the principal component analysis. Now you might ask, we have a three set of features and we are drawing three axes. Where is the dimensionality reduction coming from? We have gone from 3 dimension to 3 dimension. In this case, we have gone from 2 dimensions to 2 dimensions. Now what happens is, because the first dimension, the first eigenvalue explains almost all of the variance of the data, we might somewhere ignore if this was way too small compared to this, we would drop this off. And this vector, being a linear combination of all of the existing features, would still capture the entirety of the essence of the data. So that is the way how we achieve dimensionality reduction. First, we take the data in n-dimensional space. We represent the same data in n-dimensional space, but this time these n dimensions are n number of eigenvalues. Each eigenvalue corresponding to for each feature. So if we have 13 features, we would have 13 eigenvalues. Each value would be linear combination of all of those 13 features. And then what we do is, we would see what are the eigenvalues which explain the maximum variance in the data, and then we would put them in a descending order, and bottom 3, 4 we would have a technique which I will show you later on how to identify the features or the eigenvalues which do not explain as much variance, and we drop those off, and that's how we are left with number of dimensions much lesser than the original number of dimensions we started with. And because each eigenvalue is a linear combination of all of the existing features, we do not lose much information in this process. So that concludes this video. What I would advise is, I have given a link to a very good explanation, a visual explanation of PCA. Please watch it. It would help you develop more intuition around principal component analysis. This concludes this series on unsupervised learning. The next video would be a hands-on example showing you how principal component analysis can be done. And we would conclude the unsupervised learning series of lectures by doing a hands-on project. This project material and related data sets would be saved at the usual location. Thanks for your time watching this video. If you liked, and if these videos make sense, please do consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. A lot of effort goes into preparing these materials and recording of these videos. One of the ways by which you can support or give back to a creator of these videos is by uh, subscribing these videos, sharing it on your social media. It helps me gather more number of people who might watch these videos, and that's one of the ways to support me. Thank you very much.